This is the Career Clinic podcast, and I'm your host, Ronnie Dickerson Stewart. And you are here with me on an incredibly special day, a special moment, a special week. It's always special when we get together, but this particular week is an auspicious one. We'll call it that. And why? This week marks me being officially a full-time entrepreneur and a full-time executive leadership development coach and consultant for 1 year. And I'm at a loss for very specific words, but I have a ton of feelings about it. So I'm going to do my best in this week's episode to give words to that feeling and give you a little bit of the behind the scenes view of how it's been going, basically. And some of you, spoiler alert on myself, already know how it's going because you're my clients. We get to engage with each other. We are together weekly. I am literally a coach almost in your back pocket through the course of my corporate engagements when I get to work inside some of the world's best organizations or within my curated coaching membership community called The Collective, which it gives me chills every time I get to pull up to the members of that community and just be with them as they're at critical stages of their career development and their leadership. So I get to be their coach. And so some of you all know a bit of how it's going because you've been with me along the way. And if you're here and if you're listening to this podcast, if you have me in your earbuds, or if you're watching this on YouTube, then you're with me too. And I thank you so much for rocking with me and just being literally the best community that I didn't even know could exist, but one that I am grateful for daily. So thank you. So I won't get too mushy, but I will tell you a little bit about how it's going. I'll talk to you a little bit about it from the personal standpoint. So making that decision to leave corporate America to work with and alongside leaders in corporate organizations, how that shift has been. I'll talk about the family dynamic. I'll talk about the business dynamic, and I'll talk about what's next. The personal piece was that sometimes when you make big, audacious, important moves, it can feel like jumping off of a cliff with wet wings. And you got wings, so you know you can fly, but it's still a cliff and you jumping nonetheless. And so it goes with my journey from being a person who absolutely thought my trajectory would be to continue to rise the ranks within corporate, already secured that C-level position, had my seat at the table, if you will, and very much so was on the path with no issues to continue that for as long as I so desired. And so in the course of that, jumping off of a cliff with wet wings would seem ludicrous to some people. That said, I'm not some people. Growing up in the corporate space, and particularly in the industry where I still continue to serve in partnership, but I love, which is advertising, media, marketing, there's so many things about the work that delighted me, brought me joy, and have been the source of friendships and amazing moments. However, as I grew in the ranks, I knew that I was purposed to do something different and something more to be supportive of that space. And for me, that started to show up even before I left. And for those of you all who know my story, know that my office used to be a rotating door, had a rotating door almost, it should have, with the amount of people who used to just stop by and say, hey, you got a minute? Hey, can we chat? Hey, I need some advice. Hey, can we take a walk around the block and leave the office altogether when it gets on some confidential level things? And so that became a great deal of how I spent my time at work, in addition to the technical things I did as a function of my job. And I started in the advertising marketing industry, working in client-facing roles. That's what I absolutely desired to do, and how I desired to spend my time when I thought about what professionalism looked like, or what the frame of leadership looked like, or what my life looked like. I thought I would be willing and dealing with some of the world's biggest and most provocative and profound clients, pitching business, winning business, doing all the things, right? So I was absolutely on that track. At some point in the middle, I actually took a turn and decided to work on leadership, people development, diversity, equity, and inclusion in very specific initiatives that were about the whole of an employee and about the whole of the folks who were serving in those spaces. And that is what, as one of my favorite people, Audrey Bohannon, says, that is what put the J in my joy. And I've spent almost an equal amount of time in my career client facing as I have making that switch to be about people and talent engagement, which led me to my C-suite position, which also continued to be client facing, continued to give me those doses of willing and dealing, if you will, and pitching business and all those things. I still got to do that, but now I got to do it with a heavier dose of the people forward work that I still loved. As I think about it, again, I could have just been in that position forever and been fine. Not that it was simple at all. There was a layer of obviously deep effort, deep awareness, acute awareness of everything going on around you, acute awareness of policies and practices, and acute awareness of just what other people are going through that you hold on your shoulders as a function of doing that type of work. And it stretched me in ways that I didn't even know I could be stretched while doing it, but I'm grateful for it nonetheless. That said, before I assumed a C-suite position, I'm one of those people who constantly created new jobs for themselves. And luckily, I was at a place that was just ripe and fertile territory that celebrated that. And so one of the roles that I took on, and mind you, this is in the course of working full-time and also coaching on the side, right? So I became a certified career management and executive leadership development coach, all while working. And then I was in a supportive place that allowed me to start a OHE coach and start building a practice, although that meant I was doing a bit of both and had to figure out how to have harmony between the two, which became possible in the organization where I work because they let me create an entirely new role that was centered on career management, coaching, and people development, which is where I was as a senior vice president before I was promoted to my C-suite role. Back to the wet wings and the cliff. When I sat in that position, I looked around and I saw the good that I could do. I still recognize the greater part of the work that I was leaving off the table through coaching and career development, and taking all the things that I knew and had learned from having those seats at the table and then distributed them to the people who actually need that information the most, like navigational skills, navigational ability, navigational tools, understanding how systems work, understanding if they so choose how to move throughout those organizations. I spent so much of my time doing that just as a part of how I generally spent my time, that I knew that in the context of the industry that we got to be in, because of the things they committed to people in terms of their long-term career growth, their ability to grow, their ability to feel included, that had to be realized by other people doing the work that couldn't happen within an organization. It had to happen sometimes objectively with people telling hard truths to organizations and to talent, and with people who care deeply enough to find outcomes that ultimately serve the people that need to be most impacted and supported. That is why I jumped off the cliff with wet wings. Now, the wings were not super wet and they weren't super heavy. I know I'm going to stop using the wet wings analogy, but run with me here. I'm a very, let's call it, I wouldn't say I'm super risk averse, but I'm risk aware. And so as a mother, I'm a person with a mortgage, I'm a mate. I have the 3 M's: marriage, matrimony, and mortgage. I didn't just say, oh, I'm leaving my job today and just do cartwheels outside. No, I took the time to really be thoughtful and think about, what am I doing? What do I want to do? And how do I want to spend the last leg of my career? What feels good? Like, those are the questions I ask myself, in addition to preparing myself financially to make a move outside of my corporate space that, frankly, I didn't have intentions of leaving, but I decided to at a critical moment, and it was the best decision. So I prepared myself essentially. And when I took that leap, I had intended originally, and I've shared this on the podcast before, intended originally to just take an adult gap year. And you all know what gap years are. You usually hear about the youth taking them, but I really thought deeply about how I needed to reset. Mind you, this is 2020 going into 2021. I thought about how I need to reset, reframe, and go into my business, Oh Hey Coach, with a new level of energy and intention. And what that looked like was just taking a pause. And those who know me know I call this a whoa season. So I had a whoa season planned. Everything was covered. And again, if you listen to this podcast, some conversations and calls and some amazing just energy led me to Zoom, where I call it it's an adult gap year of sorts. I said I was an executive, a C-level intern, it felt. And that's not a diss to the experience, but it was me working at a different level, but also soaking up so much. I got to be back in the posture of a student while having a deep amount of flexibility to really tend to my business and take my time to launch it. So much happened between that year and a year ago, including family expansion, just working with the most amazing clients in the world that I didn't even imagine I'd get to work with, and then truly scaling a business. And so that's the personal side. And so right now, in this very moment, I feel so much peace because the decisions to get to the point where I could even be celebrating a year of full-time entrepreneurship came from a place of prioritizing peace, prioritizing impact, listening to and ensuring I continue to prioritize people, and deciding that integrity would be an essential part of how I do work in business. And then also really getting bold and audacious with my no's and equally audacious and all in with my yeses. And so that's the personal side of it. The family side, wow. Some of the days we remember from 2020 specifically, and not really so much in 2021, but when I worked in corporate, there were days where I spent 14 hours in a room, my own room, because mind you, the pandemic was totally happening. And I would spend time in the room just working, emails, phone calls, conversations while my kids were home, my husband was home, everyone's in the house, and I would be in a room on a video chat or having a conversation and just heads down. And everyone remembers that energy. And frankly, how stressed I was. I was pretty stressed. And it was just because I was trying to do really well, fit a lot of things in, but also I hadn't really had the time, frankly, because of the pace of how everything happened in 2020. I hadn't had the time to really continue to calibrate and be deliberate about how I wanted to lead, not in terms of my output for people, because that was on point, but in terms of how I want to be a leader holistically, which also means managing yourself. So managing myself. And so now thinking about that, my family during that time adopted a motto. It's on a screen in our home and it says joy over everything. We knew that we needed to center joy and to have a baseline reset about prioritizing that because there's so many things, work, otherwise that can stretch us outside of that, the perimeters of joy. And we knew we didn't want to experience that again. And so now, as I think of not just a year later, but 2 years later from feeling like that in 2020, wow, 3 years later, whoo, okay, time moved fast. So 3 years later, feeling like that across 2020, now my family understands that I move a lot lighter. And so I'm really careful and thoughtful about my boundaries and when I engage so that I can show up fully. And then I have my time for them carved out. It's very specific. And I have work blocks that allow me to show up and take on all the important roles that I have. And the most important role for me is wife and mom. And I just appreciate having the space to really do those jobs very well and to leave a mark that's important on my kids and their lives at this stage when they're so young. Because now they'll walk in and ask, they know my boundaries too about just being home and working. They'll say, are you on with the client? Or they'll say, can we listen to your podcast? Or can you put it on TV? And now they're in the business, or they'll ask about Oh Hey Coach, and they'll say, oh, maybe I'll work for Oh Hey Coach one day. So just like seeing Oh Hey Coach unfold and blossom. And my oldest asks me all the time, are you a boss or do you have a boss? And so I'm like, let's unpack this. Why are you asking the question and so forth? So we have these provocative conversations from the context of youth about this whole time period. And I'm thankful for that because they get to see me buoyant, they get to see me joyful, and they get to see me building because this work is deeply associated with my passion. And again, like this is how I'm spending the last leg of my career. So to have them at this age see me build a company is wild. And I hope they never forget the moments. And I hope as I build, I continue to become even more available to them. All right. So speaking of building a company, onto the business side of it. So when you decide to be an entrepreneur, when you decide to be a leader outside of the normal corporate structure, you decide to even be a freelancer, whatever you decide to do that fits outside of a normal corporate culture, it takes an adjustment. And for me, again, I'm just Planning Annie, if that's a thing. It is now. I just made it a thing, but I'm Planning Annie. And so before taking the step into full-time entrepreneurship, I invested in coaching and training that allowed me to have thoughts on what I wanted a business model to be and thoughts on how I could have a sustainable business, not necessarily just based on revenue or things like that, but based on energy and ensuring that energetically I could show up and serve in the way that aligned with the reason why I'm even in business for the first place. And so I couldn't be more thankful for great coaches. Is one of those things with really great coaches is something that will always be at the top of my list from a financial investment standpoint, because the coaches that I've been in partnership with and hired, and the coach I have even now has pushed me through the stratosphere in terms of understanding about just business. In terms of that, like when you were in community with each other, I'm going to light up your life. You're going to have the best time. My clients rave about it, like we have a great time. But on the other side of it, as equally excited and energetic as I am about my client service, again, this is my job. So I've had to really upskill about, all right, taxes, okay, cash flow, things of that nature that sometimes don't seem as fun or sexy. I've really gotten a deep understanding of that, as well as business models to understand how to block other people out and focus on what I know to be the right way to approach supporting my clients and to really serving and showing up in the industries where I serve. I've had to learn to see information for what it is and then be very deliberate about what I filter in and filter out. And so that's the business side. I am giving you all this update because the folks who listen to the Career Clinic podcast have rocked with me, have rolled with me from day one before I even happened to be a full-time entrepreneur. And I won't even say happened to be, before I decided to build Oh Hey Coach out as a full-fledged company that can serve thousands and thousands of people. That is the goal through so many different avenues. And so I'll talk a little bit about that. I won't share too many chickens before they hatch, but the things that I'm most delighted about are launching a private group membership program where I'm able to show up and serve in these very intentional ways. It's like, selfishly, I get to hang out with some of the coolest, most inspirational people that I know in the industry weekly. And we have these conversations that like rock my world. And so selfishly, okay, we built a community and now it's just growing. The other things that I'm excited about are partnerships with different platforms that allow me to reach more people. Some of you all have seen me on Fishbowl and different apps like that, or LinkedIn with Fishbowl. I have a series of conversations that we've had. I think I've had 3 with them so far. We've got another one coming up in May. So continuing to be out and just share freely beyond the podcast is one of the things that's important to me. Working with some strategic partners on new initiatives that will allow me to work with brands and work with other agencies and media companies to really help them build out programming for their talent as they really consider how they prioritize retention across their full talent ecosystem. And so I'm really intent on that. So how do you create the circumstances where the most talented people really want to stay? And how are you giving them resources that are a little bit above and beyond? So that's where I come in. Also, other things, I'm writing more. I won't say too much about writing, but I'll allude to I'm writing more. And so we'll see where that goes. I'll also say that getting out and about and showing my face real life in person is one of the things that I started doing last year at home with my kids and just being really health conscious. I have a kiddo who had tended to get sick a little bit over the course of last year. So we've been really hunkered down with him so that we can make sure he stays safe. I've been more biased towards virtual connection, which has been tremendous, but I'm excited to pop out and see a few people and a few bodies of people in real life over the course of this year. And excited to bring clients to me where I'm based in Georgia this year too. So many things that I'm excited about. And I will get to share more of them in this space and in my newsletter. So for those of you all who are here, you're already here. So you're hearing it. Those of you all who really want the inside track, I'm going to, of course, as I always do, drop a link to join our Oh Hey Coach Insiders newsletter in the description and show notes. And so if you're not already there, what are you waiting on? Come on over. And I'll be celebrating this full year of entrepreneurship all month. So it hasn't, to be honest with you, as I'm talking, I'm just speaking freely. This is a very unedited episode, but I'm just sitting in gratitude. And as I'm looking up the room where I'm recording in, there's an open window and I see blue skies and it's a warm day. It's nearly 80 degrees today. And it's just perfect for how I'm feeling, just open, clear, the warm. And I feel an intense amount of gratitude with respect to being able to do this with a level of peace that then translates to my clients, that then translates to how I deliver, then translates to how I show up and serve is just unmatched. And you are a huge part of that. If you're listening to me in your earbuds in your car ride on a maybe very short commute, if you're like my kids who turn on Google Home or Alexa or pop me on to YouTube now, if you're seeing me that way, I'm waving, and this is just the beginning. It feels like very much so the beginning, and I'm glad you're along for the ride. So cheers to 1 year of Oh Hey Coach and this growing business, growing company, headed to a town near you, and hopefully in an organization or an email inbox near you, so I can continue to support and serve you. So thank you. Thanks for tuning in. I can't wait to be with you next week and all the other weeks. Click the links in the show notes to be more connected. Like I said, join our Oh Hey Coach Insiders list, where you'll get me sliding into your inbox each Monday with our Oh Hey Monday newsletter. And just massive gratitude to the people in these industries that I get to show up in who truly care about their talent and are willing to put their efforts, their intellect, and even their dollars behind solutions that say that and show that daily. I'm with you. I'm one of you. Let's get it. All right. Until next time, I'll talk to you all soon. And thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Career Clinic Podcast. Bye now.